And so, if we find the root
Oh god, this is the most boring class ever.
ultimately how we discover that bread
I regret
is
staying
indeed
up.
the greatest source
Getting a
of
bit
food
sleepy.
here at the Academy.
Maybe I should just
Now for our
slowly
next topic, ducks,
fall asleep.
bears, and beasts.
Sounds so good right now.
All right, the teleport spell worked, but I am small. I don't know. This class is pretty boring, but it's hard to be kind of fun, especially when you're describing things in Dungeons and Dragons. So, let's learn how. The old typewriter, where dreams can either be made or crushed, where writers weep their tears. And if you're like me, this is where you do most of your writing, your description. And it's also the easiest part, because when you have to go and vocalize it and say it, you might find yourself stuttering. And oh boy, the nightmares. But enough weeping and crying yourself to sleep. Today, we're gonna become legendary. We're gonna be using a tactic that's gonna immerse your players right into the game. And we're gonna do it using what the detectives finally cooked up in the lab. I'm talking about the main culprit of the case. That's right, the 5 main senses. Yeah, that was pretty good. Alright, let's get into it. First one down the list. Choosing our first one, we're going to go ahead and go with sight. After all, if they can't see, they can't do anything.
I can see!
I can fight!
So, at the surface level, it can be easily imagined as just inserting yourself in the scene and pretty much describing what you see coming from your imaginative mind. However, once you understand the value and what you can do with sight, you can start using it really well. Sight is what gives the main aesthetic to a location. It can be used to showcase architecture and culture for a variety of races. For example, if you're describing a dwarven city, it should be fundamentally different than if you're describing an elven city. It's pretty obvious. Sights can also be used to give more complex meaning behind what is being described. Such as if you're telling them that when they walk into a city they see siege weapons being made, or fear on an NPC's face, it can indicate to the player that something further is happening, and it will cause them to wonder or investigate further on what's going on. The other method with sight to enhance it and further describe it is to use pictures that you find online, whether you generate that through AI or find them on Pinterest or something, and showcase it as kind of a reference photo. Still take the time to describe what they see and don't just throw a photo out and call it a day, but it can be used to kind of really show them something that they can kind of grasp themselves into. The next sense I want to talk about is smell, and this is definitely an underutilized sense that can play a huge shift in mood and tone. It's very few times that smell becomes relevant, but I guarantee if you use it, your players will react in some way or form. You could use smell to help instill that something is nearby. Harsh conditions are present, or a sense of hearth and safety that guards them. For example, a smell of sulfur can indicate lightning in the area, a smell of decay and rotting flesh can warn them of death nearby, or a smell of delicious pies and roasted duck can let them know that rest is coming. I also like to flavor smells coming off of powerful spells, especially ones that are above 5th level. Someone casting a 5th or higher level fireball would leave a scorched scent of whatever material they hit. Whether it's burned wood, burned flesh, or burned cloth, you really kind of want to play into the impact of the spell going off. Someone casting Blight, for example, would cause a smell of fungus and kind of this mushroom-like substance that's in the air. Or a druid casting a healing spell could smell of roses and beautiful flowers. These are all just to play into kind of more flavoring to make things feel a little more impactful for you as the DM and for the players with the spells that they cast. The next thing to talk about is hearing. Hearing is the best for world building, and that's because hearing is the only scent that can travel. What I mean by this is that characters can hear information about places and events happening thousands of miles away from them. As such, it's really good to use these moments of when they're walking through crowds or taverns to drop pieces of lore to them as you please. Another spell that has recently been put in D&D is Sending, and that is obviously a really good way for characters and NPCs to communicate with people thousands of miles away, though it does have its problems sometimes that cause for the DM, but overall, This is something that you can use to let players know that outside areas exist, and it's not just focused on the area they're around. This is really, really nice to make your world feel alive, shifting, and let them know that consequences are real. Now, it goes without saying that at some point, sound effects are going to be used, whether you digitally use them or do it from your own mouth, and some people are very much way more gifted than others at it. It's something, though, that can be acquired through great effort and practice. Once you get one down, it's very fun to use. Kind of the iconic bottle opening just feels really much better than just describing to your players that they open the bottle. It's a really nice way to immerse them in the situation and the events that are unfolding. The second to last one to talk about is feel, and that is what they touch and what they feel for themselves. The best way I can divide it is what they do to the world and what the world or people do to them. For example, for the first one, what they do to the world is whenever the players are touching something, interacting with an object, be sure to use this time to increase the immersion and depiction of that object. Whether it feels metallic, fragile, moldy, wet, hot, cold, sharp, electric, slimy, or sturdy, these can all be used as tools to connect the object to the environment or even creatures themselves. The second side of it is what's done to them, and this is kind of more of an emotional feeling that transforms descriptions into emotions. For example, something that's like a chill reaching your bone or a weight that's lifted off of your shoulders. This should be used as a way to set the tone of what's happening to them. The final one to talk about is taste. Hopefully your players aren't going around licking everything, but when that taste is used, it's mostly when they're eating or drinking. Hopefully. It's difficult to truly grasp a taste for both the players and the DM. I found a nice way is to relate it to real life food that I know they enjoy or hate. If you want to improve that skill, I'm rooting for you. I absolutely suck at it, but there are some keywords players tend to enjoy, such as using the words garlic, parmesan, butter, chipotle, tenderized, sauteed, honey, etc. Just find those keywords that sound good. Now, coming to drinks, I usually look up a description of fine wine or look at a boba tea place and repeat what's on the menu. However, if you want to take it to the next level, you can use fantasy ingredients, and this is really, really cool when it's done. For example, yak milk, wyvern steak, fey berries, key-infused tea, dragon-heated food, manticore meats, beholder tentacles. You can really get as crazy or as gross as you want. The five senses are what tethers our mind to our physical world, and it's what will tether your players to their characters. While there is such as a thing as over-describing, it usually results in the DM spending a large amount of the session describing every little thing that happens. As with everything, it's going to be your call on what you decide to skip over, or pause the flow of the game to describe the moment in detail. Sometimes it's absolutely needed, and other times it's just being redundant. My best advice is to read the room as best as you can. If the players seem like they want to skip past what's going on and start the next phase or the next part of what's going on, then expedite your descriptions. Do it with hasted decisions. But if the situation is important or the players are tense, then slow it down and draw them in.